Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I'll start with bookmark ones, the ones where most of us are familiar with, just because it's an easier place to start. Let me just load up a test view, and I'll make a new bookmark just for this. And when making a bookmark, there is a markup icon when hovering over the one you're currently selected, which puts you into this editing mode, presents you a bunch of tools. These tools can be toggled on and off in admin, so you can limit the amount of tools you're working with, because some of these can be a little beta or just not very useful for what you're working on. So for example, some of the 3D tools where you're drawing a polygon in the 3D view instead of a call out or just a text box image on your screen. So I'll do a basic one of a text box where you can drag and just mouse up and you'll get a box on your screen. And you can use all the settings at the top to customize how the box looks. And then you can use the buttons on the right and bottom to add more cells, like a table cell to this box. So I can add a row below, for example, and now these 2 rows. And I can drag and resize them. So I'll make a very basic one where I'll just change the background a bit. Write some text saying this is a header. You position it in the center. And change the bottom color too. There we go. So if I save this right now and then leave the editing, this markup is now attached to the bookmark that I made. So if I go to this other bookmark, it turns off, and I go to this one, it flies, and then it turns on this markup. So that is the bookmark markups. Bookmark markups are the ones you typically use more of the tools, because a lot of these tools are geolocated. So if you draw a call out, if I drew a call out here, it will always be coming out of this particular point in the street. Whereas for entity markups, you want to be drawing for the particular entity, where if you drew a call out, it wouldn't be related to the entity's position. Okay. So John, do you understand that?
So, totally. So the
awesome.
the one you have on screen right now, though, if you wanted to do that once and then apply it to all other bookmarks, can you copy and paste?
The bookmark markup is pretty limiting on that, unfortunately, but you can then make new bookmarks and it'll clone it. So if you were to, because the new bookmark saves the current scene and makes the new bookmark using the current scene. So if you had a markup that was turned on, it would then clone it over to the new bookmark. You can export markups, and it gives you a JSON file containing everything you need to generate the markup, but that only lets you apply it to the new custom form ones, which is for the per entity basis ones. So I don't have an import just yet for the bookmark ones.
Okay, that's good to know.
Any other questions, or do you want me to move on to the entity one and show you the difference?
Comment, Matthew. I'd just be cautious about referring to the, the pop-ups or custom info panels as markups in any sense. I think that just may serve. It's just coincidental that we use the same tool to create them. But, yeah, they're not really.
In admin, we do refer to them as markups.
Yes, I know. We may need to.
Yeah. We have 2 different places with the same wording, so it can get a little confusing. Where one is for the same tool, but it's being used for an entity kind of pop-up, and one is the same tool being used for a scene of a bookmark. So we might need to adjust the wording in the future, but they're 2 very different things.
Yeah, what one is really a WYSIWYG editor for pop-ups forms.
Yeah, once what you see and what you get, the other one is more like attached to an entity that is a layer rather than anything else, right? So anything that an object related will have that particular pop-up. This is just a scene that you can see. Am I on the right kind of no?
These are markups are something that are specific to bookmarks. You mark up a bookmark. You don't mark up an entity per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we should try to use a different term then.
That's what I think so.
Yes, we will need to think about a new word for the custom form one.
I think custom forms is fine. We just want
then we need a classifier to differentiate the two kinds.
I think just WYSIWYG custom form is fine for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
it's basically, basically markups and forms. That's the, I mean,
yes, we just have forms, the original forms, these ones, and we have a new version now, which is the custom form, the markup custom form ones, where we need a new word for them. So we.
Yeah, I mean, I like them. It seems like the markups can be for the bookmarks can be a legend, maybe, or a presentation like a deck.
Yes, they're a presentation layer rather than a data tool.
Yeah, like you want to just put a bunch of like a call to action on your presentation or whatever, right? On the bookmark. Okay.
Yep. I'll just show off a few tools that are available for the bookmark markup, whereas the custom form one does not allow these tools because they are focused on geolocated positions. For example, let me just make a few and then you'll see when I move on to the other one. So if I draw a few of these different things and then just save this current markup. So the 3D one obviously stays in there, and same as the call out. So it stays in those positions. So it's not very useful for the individual entity ones because you want to be able to have it reusable for any entity, whereas these are always going to be placed in that one position, not where the entity is placed. So let me move on to making the entity-based one. So I'll make a new one and just call it demo. Create it. Now I'll assign it to my right-click. And then I'll open it in Navigator to edit it. And it puts me in a random location, which later we'll just have it as a blank globe. So for now, it's a little confusing that it shows you the Earth when it's nothing to do with positioning. And the only things you're allowed to do in this one right now are the text box and the add image. So I'll just draw the same text box we did before. So it's the same tool where you drag, draw box, and you can style it in any way. But now I'll just put some test text in it. And we'll see the difference on how this appears on the screen. Just save it there. And it says save markup, refresh admin, because this doesn't know that we just made this markup until we refresh. But I already assigned it to a right click on buildings. So if we go to the view now where we just looked at that bookmark markup, go and find a building. So this entity is a building. So let me right click it. We can see it appears now. I can right click this one. Oh, it's not a building. This one's a pond. So a different thing appeared. So that's the difference between the two. So if I were to go to a bookmark, the one we just made, this markup would appear. But then I can also right click a building and have the new markup appear on top of it.
Huh. Okay.
So what this one lets you do though is you can't access all the tools, but you can access some more settings to say per se for this box. So if I were to right click this box, I can select an attribute. And this attribute comes from a list of attributes from the entity type we're making this markup for, or the markup custom form for. So for example, if I wanted to get identity, so the ID of the entity that we're right clicking, I can just select it and it places this funky text that you just work around, and I can write a sentence with it. So I can say this entity ID is, let me just scale it a little down now that we've got text, change the background color, save it, and refresh the view. Go to one without a markup. So we can see this entity ID is, and it's a bunch of just random text because that is the, if we were to look at the attribute for Bruce ID, that's the jumble of text over here. So if we click some buildings between each other, you'll see that text changes because it's reading the value from the entity record itself. So you can write paragraphs using the address or contact phone number or any other attribute from the entity and have that information change dynamically between entities. Let me make a new row. So other than just attributes, you can also use background images. So I can set the background image to be a selected static image, or I can do a default entity image. So entity records can have galleries, and I can choose to have the background of this particular cell to be the default entity image that we're opening up for. So if I save this and refresh in the view, I think this one has an image, so there we go. So the house here appears. So if I go into the info panel for it and go into the images, you'll see this one is the default. So that is what appears when you right-click it. But if I right-click something, yeah, without an image, nothing is there because that particular entity does not have an image. So it changes between entities.
Can you create almost like a scroll through the images that attach to that entity, or are you guys working on it? Right now, I know you only display one.
I'm not working on it, but our intern Ben is currently working on that as one of his tasks, so it is coming.
Okay. I just want to.
Yep. So there is an alternative right now you can do while waiting for that. Is there is a lightning bolt here, which is change action, and one of the actions you can choose is open entity gallery.
Ah, got it.
So if I save that, let me show you what it does. So it's not scrolling while you're looking at the box itself, but if I were to click this image, it now shows the full gallery of all the images within that entity.
Oh, okay.
So it's a workaround.
Yeah, sure.
And other actions we can look at for now, since while we're there, is this open link. So you can write a URL to a website, and when you click on it, you can either make it appear in a pop-up, or if you know that website does not support being in a pop-up or not, you can make it a new tab. And so we'll open a new browser tab instead for that URL. An interesting thing you can do. Oh,
sorry, does it support iframe yet, or do you guys still kind of a little iffy on
so it is using an iframe to show these URLs,
okay.
but it's not reading this as code. It's putting it as the source. So if the website said, here is my iframe, copy paste it, you won't be able to put it there because they typically give you the HTML code to put in there.
Sure.
So, yes.
So
I showed off.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. So we don't have to put the iframe code in it. You'll take care of it.
So all you need to do is provide me the source URL. So YouTube, when you choose to, if you press the share button on a YouTube video and go to the embed, they give you the full iframe. But if you just put the URL there instead, I will do the iframe for you, and then it will show the YouTube video in my box.
I encountered a few websites that actually prevents you from doing hyperlink. Is that even an option if they say you can't do a?
Yes, there are. Oh, they can't stop you from opening in a new browser tab, but they can stop you from opening stuff in their iframes.
Yeah.
So some websites choose to opt out of this, and that's why we do have the new tab. So if you're unsure or you don't want to test it because you might have the URL change between entities, so you might think one of my 5 entities, this won't work. So I may as well have all of them be safe by doing new tab.
Got it.
So won't try use an iframe, it will just use a new browser tab, which is a guaranteed it will work.
Okay. Yeah, because I encountered a few, especially real estate website. They don't want you to kind of step off their website. They just want to force you to do that. So yeah, they stop using from letting iframe because with iframe you can embed any part of your database anywhere. I mean your website anywhere.
Yes, so you don't want to have your branding on someone else's website sometimes. Yes. Sometimes you do because it's nice to have a YouTube video within a website. So you're still using their platform, watching their advertisements.
Yeah.
So it's a win-lose. So it's a case-to-case basis. This is why we have the option.
Yeah. Okay.
This is not very useful when you're typing the URL yourself because you can just test if they support it once and then you'll know I don't have to check this box or I do have to check this box. But for attributes, this is useful because I can click this button here and say, I want to read the attribute or URL for this entity. And so the entity record will have a URL and this URL can be different between the entities. And so one of these URLs could support it, one of these URLs might not support it, and you don't know. That's where you would just always check new tab. Is everyone following, or do you want me to?
No, I'm good. I mean, about John and Kevin though.
Okay. So the next
I'm
thing you
good.
can do is,
Go
you're
ahead.
good, awesome. Next thing you can do is a
That's
draggable hotbar. So we had a case where someone wanted to move their box live. So they position it here while editing, but then while viewing it, it's kind of in the way. They want to look at entities behind it. They're fine with it being the default position of the screen, but it's very difficult to get around it once it appears. So the solution here is that you can make a new row. Let me just drag this down, make a row above it. Oh, I clicked the wrong one there. It's good for a header anyway. And one of the actions you can do is a draggable hotbar. Let me just change the color so we can see it better when we work with it. And save that. Refresh. So now I can grab this top section, only the top section. So it becomes a hot point you can move around. So you're not editing the record right now, and if you were to refresh, it would appear back in the default position. But while you're in this instance, so you haven't refreshed your browser yet, if you reopen it even, it will stay in that position. So that way, if you're presenting and you want to move your box out of the way so you can see your scene better, you can then move it to the side and then cycle through the different entities. And you can have as many of these hot points as you want. So it's just instead of clicking it to open a gallery or a link, you can just choose to make that section something you can drag around. Yeah. And the next action we can go is info view. So this one's self-explanatory, so I won't refresh it multiple times, I'll just explain it. So you can make a section. When you click on it, the default left click happens. So it's this that appears. So it's just the info view, all the information about the entity. The next one, entity gallery. So that's the one I already showed. So you can click on it and it shows all the different images and you can cycle through them. And the last one is toggle relationships, which I will show. So I'll show another feature while I'm at it to make the button. So we'll make a section on the right of it. Let me just recolor the section. Something we can differentiate easier. And then I can use the insert icon button. So if I click this, it shows a gallery of all these different icons we support. And let me just try search for something like, let's see, Apple is the one I usually use for testing. Put an apple in here, scale it up a little bit, and maybe even give it a text shadow. And now I can change the action of this particular cell to toggle relationships. So if I save this, refresh, and then go to an entity that has relationships, which I know this entity has it. If I click this apple, see it shows all the relationships. And if I click it again, it will hide them. So I think that's everything you need to know about the markup in its current state. There's a lot of different settings, but I won't cover all of them because some of them are self-explanatory and some of them is just you click around it and you'll find out what it does pretty easily. For example, text alignment or padding pushes the content. Let me just show it, this one. So if I move it on the bottom right of the text and increase the padding, it pushes it from that corner. Any questions?
So far, so good.
It's good.
Yeah, I mean, can I see the icons again? Do we have a big icon list?
Yes. So we have this. We have a button here. It's the only place that it's going to be put into some admin places too soon. Because, for example, plugins, which is a not very well known feature, does let you choose an icon for its button.
Oh yeah.
So it's a pretty long list. The search is not very powerful because I'm taking the literal text of each icon and see this one's called angle double up, for example. So I recommend trying a couple different words. So if I want to see this water, I found it. If I write tree, it finds it occasionally. But sometimes you want to try it.
What if you type building? What is it? Just looks like that? Okay, that's kind of our standard building icon. Okay.
So it's pretty good. These are the icons we use typically for our UI too. So you'll see some of these. You'll see them in other places in our UI, but this is the full list of what's available to us.
What about like a icon for social?
So they have a lot of
stuff.
real social media companies. For example, if you write, I have to find these. Maybe Facebook. Nope. It's hard to find the keywords. Let me go into the real website quickly and try to find the keywords so I can show you. But they have the Twitter icon, the Facebook icon. They have all of the social medias there, as long as you know what to search.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be. It's a little difficult for us to know what words to use.
Well, one of our customers, I mean, we're just going to put some templates in their deployment in January, and we're doing economic, social, and financial. So, financial probably has a dollar sign, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's definitely dollar signs.
Or a money bag or something. And then environmental might have like a leaf, maybe, or I mean, I'd rather use one that has an existing icon than try to look for another icon that doesn't match outside of this group.
No, it's person.
How about environment? Is that a word?
Green. Just type green.
I
think Manfred that we need to get a whole new dictionary. I'm
feeling too.
Yeah, it is. We do at some point. We talked about dictionaries of things, of icons, of other preset things. So it is the same big task to do. Yeah. But if you go through the list slowly, it's better to just look at what's available before trying to use keywords. But there's a leaf here, for example.
Yeah. I mean,
there's probably icons that will match your needs. It's just the keywords can be difficult to find.
And you can change the color.
Sorry, I was having a drink there. Yes, you can use all of the text-based things. So you can change the text color of it. You can change the font size of it. You can give it a shadow. You can change the shadow color of it.
So it's just like a font.
Yes,
right?
it's treated like text.
Okay, great.
You can align it in different ways.
Excellent.
Pan into it. It's pretty flexible, but I do recommend being a little careful because even though I let you treat it like text, behind the scenes these are images. So I have tried my best to write code that when you click on it, see how it automatically moves to the left, right, so to not let you draw inside of it or anything. But there can be bugs, so you might end up in the center. See how for a moment it ends up in the center? Because that's me moving you outside of it. Because the default action just happens to be you can type inside of this picture.
I think for us, we just want to hyperlink it is probably the most important thing.
So you would use an action. So you go open link and then type your URL. And then when you click this box, it would open that URL.
Okay, great. Good. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to play around with it. And
there's a lot to explore in Markup. It's one of our larger tools, but once you get through all of it, there's a lot you can do with it.
Yeah, definitely. John, how are you sponging up on this?
I'm trying. It won't really come together until I sit down and start to do.
I'm recording it, so if you want, I can always send it to you later.
Oh, great. Font.
Okay. If there's no other questions for the markups themselves, we can move on to relationships now.
I think if I could suggest, John, one of the things in terms of learning might be just to, build something up in, say, PowerPoint or something like that with some markups and decide like this to do this and this to do this. If you get stuck, and then we can work through perhaps how that would be achieved, and that might be a way to learn. I set a goal. What something needs to look like, and then we'll figure out the best way to make that so.
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry, I got thrown off somehow.
Oh. Okay. I guess relationships time. So relationships, or at least viewing them, is still a very new feature. So some of the UI might not be as clean as we would like, so as a warning, but the functionality is there now. So we start at relationship types. So these are kind of the names that you want to attach between entities. So for example, you can see these. So you can have an entity that's beside another entity, or you want an entity that's associated to another entity, and that forward relationship would be associated, and then the entity that is being associated backwards is related to the first entity. And you can see easier how, so something is a floor of a building, but something is also the building of that floor. So you can choose what kind of relationship names you want to apply between entities, if you understand that. So let me just work with one that I already have, because I know I've got a few relationships we can visualize from this one. But if you click on one that I haven't set up, there's create schema. So once you create a schema, it will generate one, and this is how you apply values to the relationship itself. So for example, if we had a case where we wanted to know the amount of students coming from a location to a school, if I understood it correctly. So we had the schema included the amount of students. So the relationship itself knows the information between the two entities. So if I go, for example, to, I think, there we go. So you have students volume. And these are some just test ones I put above, so speed, tallness, and thickness, because we can style the relationship, the visualized parabola that appears using the attributes of the relationship. So if I had to look at the style that's being applied, there is a little preview of it. We can see these line color, line width, the animation time, and the distance to height ratio, so how tall it goes versus how long it goes. So we have the second value is usually the default. So it tries to grab an attribute value from the record, and if in the absence of it, we still want to show something. So the something that we show is the next possible case. So this is orange when we can't calculate a gradient because there is no value to use. See how this one is trying to use thickness of this relationship. In the absence of it, we use orange. This one's trying to use the value of students' volume, but in the absence, we use 8. And then it goes through this way. So let me just open up where I've got a few relationships for this particular relationship type, and I've got a few for this relationship type. So it's a blue and orange one, and we're going to try find a few of them in the view and see how they look. So if I were to click an entity and go to its relationships, we'll see this one entity is associated to all of these entities. And if I click the eye, I can visualize these relationships, where it's drawing the parabolas out of this entity to all of its related entities. And these are the blue ones. So if we go back to the relationship types and go to associated and look at the style, you can see it's the blue line. And it's only using preset values. So this blue line width is 4 pixels, 1 second animation time, and then it's a quarter height of the distance it's going. So it's not different between any of these entities. But if I were to go to a bookmark where I've visualized some of these relationships, we can find one. There we go. We can see these orange ones. These are all the same relationship type, but this one's still going. These ones are finished. They're slightly different gradients of this orange because they're reading the values of the entities. So if I click this really tall one, we can see the speed is 5. So it takes 5 seconds to complete the arc. So this value doesn't have to be speed. It can be something more real. So for example, you could have, let me think of something. So you can have a grocery store that delivers food, and so the amount of deliveries it does, the line gets thicker between two locations, and maybe it takes longer to draw itself. Not very great of examples, but I think you can understand the point. And we can look at this one, for example, and it's 2 seconds. And some of these don't have values, so it's using the default values that we set as a fallback. And at the top here, you can see the two entities it's related. So So it's this entity. See, there's a little icon that appears on the screen to show where it is. So this entity is beside this entity, and this relationship is the visualized relationship between these two entities. So it has its own record that's independent from the two entities. Is everyone following?
Yep.
Any questions? I want to move on to how to create the relationships next.
This was conveyed to Mike Minor, right? He's
Yes,
been
so
working.
he's probably the best person who knows how this works now.
Yeah. Okay.
So he knows how to do all the markup stuff and the relationship stuff because I worked with him directly to get all of this achieved. So let me try and make a new relationship now that we see all these current ones, because it isn't the most self-explanatory tool, unfortunately. So let me go to one of these and click the relationship tabs, and there's a button, create relationships. So this puts you into a selection mode where you can click or use different tools to select the different entities in your view. So I'm trying to add relationships to this entity. So I can go and click this entity and go save over here and say, are you sure you want to create one relationship? So do I want to create a relationship between entity A and entity B? So yes, I do. And it adds it right there. So you can do multiple at once. So if I were to go create relationship and do 4 of these entities and go create relationships, it makes all of them. And then if I want to visualize that, I simply click visualize relationships, which will use the relationship type, which was associated related to. So if I look at that there, that's the blue one again. I can press the eyeball and it draws the parabolas that we designed. So these lines also don't have to be parabolas. We have the option of making them flat by just simply making the height to distance relationship 0. There we go. So if I save and close this and refresh, there we go. You can already see them being drawn. Oh, things loading in. So you can see all of them are now straight through. Oh, this one's still trying to do a little bit of the curvature of the Earth, you can see. Yeah. Any parts you want to show me again, or is everyone just following?
I'm okay. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of information. All of it's pretty simple to understand, I think, but you do have to memorize a lot to get through these workflows.
Yeah, I think you got to try it one time and see how it goes, and make a few mistakes. Just go and fix it.
I think that's everything for relationships then. Unless, we also have a relationship tree, but it's still going through a lot of changes, but I will still show it off, I guess. So let me find an entity with a number of relationships like this one. So we have a button here called Entity Relationships. And let me go to Associated Related To at the top here. Let me try and open it and see. So we can see a tree of the relationships. So if one of these buildings happen to be also to have any children relationships, so if this building was associated to something also underneath, it would show the full tree. And this lets you navigate a tree of relationships if you were a fancy enough architect and designed one. For stuff like IFC imports, this tree is created from reading the file. So this is an IFC tile set. So if I click one of these pieces, it will load a full tree of it. And you can see all of it. So this is the tree that's going through a lot of changes. So you may expect some bugs and things to happen, but this is the current state. So you can see how many things are underneath it. You can hide parts of the tile set. You can highlight parts of the tile set. See different things. So it highlights not only itself, but everything that's underneath it. So if I were to click the top thing, it would highlight the whole tile set. So this is probably the easiest way to navigate through a larger tile set that supports a tree. So things like cesium tile sets won't support this because we don't have that tree record to work with.
Okay.
I think that's everything to say about relationships right now.
Yeah, I guess my question with relationships, Matt V, is like if we're looking at, say, we're looking at 22 proposed buildings in a urban redevelopment project, and of those 22, 7 of them have a retail base. Let's just have a retail at the first floor. So if you wanted to be able to show where those retails were, like highlight them, or, would you use the relationship tool, or would you do something else? In other words, if I said, hey, I want to make a bookmark that just shows all the retail space in this urban plan so people can get a feel for how much retail we're putting in, would it be on the relationship that you would do that, or would you do it with some other, like would you create a separate building type with that feature?
There's a number of ways you can highlight entities in a bookmark. So what you're essentially saying is I have a few entities that I want to kind of pop out, right, in your bookmark?
Yeah, that are broken up into sections, and I want to pop out certain sections of these different entities.
Yes, yeah. So I'll try go through a couple different ways. Every way is not perfect, but maybe there's one that suits your need. So one is just using markup. So you can just go a call out of this particular entity and say, here I am, this is what I am. And if you know your way around markup enough, you can, because it's positioned always around this point, you can change the background color to be transparent. And so it's a sort of, see, it's a box around something. And then if I click the line, I can hide the line too. I can make it also transparent. And these points, I can make everything hidden, sort of. And then it's not perfect, but it does draw a box around what you're trying to emphasize in your screen. This is a 2D way. See, it's just a box around this point. So if I save this and now move my view around, see, it's always showing that box area now.
Yeah. So if you just want to make a box around all the retail.
Yeah. So this is a way. It's not a great way, I have to admit, but it is a way. Another way using markup, you can use the 3D polygon tool. So if I were to draw, I want to emphasize this particular polygon. So I draw another one, and I can then extrude this one. And then change the opacity. And so this emphasizes this particular polygon. And then if you want, you can also draw a markup box coming out of it saying, here I am, this is what I am.
That's not bad.
So another way of emphasizing a building. So it's, again, not perfect because you're going to have to draw this polygon yourself. And it's...
Is the question, though, that, it is attributed as being retail and you want to highlight all... objects that are tagged as retail? I mean, wouldn't that just be a colorization process?
Yes. Yeah, that's one. I'll get to this. I'll cover every single possible option, Mark. So even just the styling, which is definitely what I feel is the best option.
Yeah.
So the other one you can do is through relationships. If they are retail, but they have the relationship is limited, it has to be between two entities. So, for example, if you had some sort of company headquarters or something, maybe you have a retailer, and these are the buildings that are attributed in a way to this retailer. You can have 3 of them be a different relationship type, or even an attribute in the relationship itself saying, I want to color this one differently. And so these 4 might have a line that's transparent, so you can't even see that line. But these 3 will be a red, bright arrow or just a straight line that goes between them to emphasize that relationship. If you can understand that.
Yeah.
So that's another way of doing it. And then I think finally is what Mark was saying, which is definitely the best way, is in a menu, we have 3D models. Oh, I might actually have a bookmark I can start working from. Geometry attributed? No. What menu item is it using? Geometry buildings. So if I go to geometry buildings, we're trying to style all of these buildings. And these buildings are polygons, and we can have a different fill color based on an attribute. So I like to keep one at the bottom as a default, because we've had cases where a default was not supplied, and so the polygon was not drawn at all, because there's no color you can give it. As Peter's aware, he's the one who had to face that. So I usually put one at the bottom, which is what you want it to go to in case there's no value. And then I can do maybe a gradient or a color mapping. So color mapping is probably what you're going for. So I choose an attribute. So these are the attributes available in building. And I can go testing value 1 and go 1. So if the value is 1, or if in your case it will be maybe retail in bold letters or something, I can say this, it'll be red, bright red. Otherwise, it'll be green. So you can make entities with a particular attribute be a completely different color. So I can save and close this, and this works for all of their values. So extrusion, the outline color. Oh, there we go. UI died for a second.
Quick question: does that goes for 3D cesium streaming models too? Does that the principle applies? Okay.
So let me just go to a 3D model for a second to show you. So at the top here, we have customized for 3D models, which will apply to tileset entities too.
Okay. Okay.
So for example, a CC3D tileset, and you can have the fill color to see this one's based on height for whatever reason. So if the height is more, it becomes more of a red. If the height is less, it's more of a white color. We might even, oh, there's no 3D. Wait. See if we can maybe find one. Oh, height's a family value, and we can't change it for an individual. So this is a bad example. Let me get a different thing. You see testing value 1 is still there. So we'll make it so instead of using height, it's going to use testing value 1. So the lower the number, it's more white. The higher the number, it's more red. And we can save that. So it's 3D models buildings, refresh. Now let's see if we can get that working by giving it a larger value. There we go. See, this one's red now. But if I give it maybe a value of 25. Oh, the default color of that was blue, so it's barely applying it. So let me work around the fact that the model had a blue by instead of mixing, I can replace the color. Or alternatively, I can make it mix higher. So the higher this value, the more it's going to use the new color rather than the 3D model's original color. That way, if your model is, as you saw, blue, you want to not show it blue, you want to show it white or red, so you would either mix it more or you would replace that color entirely. To note, though, it doesn't affect, or it starts disregarding things like ambient inclusion we found, or other material properties. So if you had a very metallic color and you go replace, it will become a very flat color in the end. See how it's now white or red, and it's very hard to see because we're disregarding the material and replacing it. So it's the same with the blend. So it's the higher the blend value or the mix, the more it will start to disregard this. So you have to find the sweet spot for your models. So does this solve your problem?
It does partially. I mean, I guess, Peter, Mike, we have kind of a complicated workflow where the building is created inside of another tool and then it gets exported back to Bruce. And I don't know if it's going to be exported back as just one entity with 3 different sections, or if it's going to be exported back with 3 different sections.
So it might be three entities with their different states, or if it's one entity with multiple values.
Stacked. You know, it's stacked entities, right? It would be stacked.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's different. It's almost like a wedding cake.
What's that?
So you have the tier.
Yeah.
But I think Kevin, the design of the building, I think is supersede. The only thing is, like Matt V said, we do a polygon enclosure. That's the only way I can think of right now that allows us to do that. The only question is, can we do a wedding cake polygon?
Wedding cake.
So we can highlight different heights.
No. So markup does not support you to elevate the polygon yet. So it's not impossible, and it is planned at some point, but you can't right now draw a polygon and say, I want to be this many meters above the ground. There's a lot of difficulties with telling cesium stuff like that. So I'm working on making my own visuals just for for solutions like this.
No, I agree. I mean, it's probably very hard for that stupid thing climb to the ground, offset
Yes,
absolute.
it's always with the terrain going up and down. If it was a flat surface, very easy, not difficult for me to code in, but I do have to account for all cases. Yeah. So, but if you did have a wedding cake of entities, you can decide to have, if you want to write a story saying this particular wedding cake story says this, and then this next bookmark you emphasize a different one, you can hide them simply. So we have a lot of ways you can hide entities these days. For example, if I use the 2D rectangle selection here and select every entity in the view here, they are separated by entity type, and they have a simple toggle where I can hide just all the buildings, for example.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
And this is saved with the bookmark itself. So all of these hidden entities will be hidden for the bookmark. And this is also in the tree, which is not perfect. It doesn't read the current state. So if I click this, see how it shows, I can toggle it off and on.
Yeah.
It will always show on initially in the tree. Something I'm working on. It's just the trees can be very large, and it might take me some time to read through all of the entities. So I'm working on solutions for that. But it is another way you can hide. So if you had a complicated tree, you can choose to hide a whole branch of it or the whole tree and save that to your bookmark. So it's just other ways to emphasize entities. It's just you can recolor them, or you can completely hide the entities that you aren't interested in.
Sure. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Oh, another way you can choose to show entities as layers. I think I'll cover next. I'll segue to layers now, or tags as we like to call them now. So, any questions before I move on to tags?
Nope, not for me.
I'm good.
Awesome.
Nope.
So we have a concept of tags, which used to be called layers. So I'm just trying to transition the wording by mentioning both for now.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a way
that
to...
was one I'm missing. Okay, layers. Yeah. Okay.
It's one of the... you can have an entity that falls under multiple tags. So for example, you have my house here. I live in Mount Albert in Auckland. So I can apply the tags Mount Albert, Auckland, New Zealand, the Earth. I can apply multiple arbitrary tags that I make myself to this one entity or multiple entities. And this lets me hide and show or have menu items that show these entities that only have certain tags. So I can show, they're still all buildings under the entity type buildings, but I can choose to only show buildings in Auckland that way. Another thing you can do, which is special to tags, is you can give access permissions to them. So I can say if I don't have permission to view entities in Auckland, I can tag those specific entities to be entities that are in Auckland, and then they will only show if I have permissions to view entities in Auckland when I want to see all of the entities. So it's a way to restrict certain users from seeing certain data you want to be restricted, some more sensitive information. So restricted itself is pretty self-explanatory, where you just tag it and choose the groups. So I'll leave that for more experimentation, but I will walk you through how to apply tags to entities and how to make menu items using those tags, quote unquote, layers. I believe I have a bookmark somewhere here that I even did it. Nope, I removed it. Okay, so if I go to the project view menu, I did. I'll make a new menu item under buildings and say buildings Auckland. Oh, I didn't spell buildings correctly. Buildings. And say I want to load Bruce entities of type building, and we'll just mark them with any legend. We're going to show them as 3D models so they can be anything. Let's give it just a building style. I think I have one in here somewhere. I have a very long list of styles. Here we go. And then I can choose tags. I can show only selected tags, and then go, I only want to see entities in Auckland. And then save this menu item. And then refresh here.
Madfee, just a clarification. I was checking that doesn't work for cesium tile sets though, does it?
Yes, I believe cesium tile sets, until they have a record. So until you
No. I mean our generated tile sets.
It should work with our
No,
generator.
it doesn't currently. Just
let me look at the menu item so we can test. Yes, so it's not available. So we can get there because we do have all the information needed. But
okay.
Yes, I see. Because it's the same information as we need to style the entity, for example. So we can style our entire sets right now, but we haven't added tags.
I just wanted to check with you. I did note that the other day. So
so it's not that it's impossible with something stopping us. It's just we haven't added it to the tile sets. Yeah. So let me now just hide everything and try use this tag. We'll see if there's anything marked Auckland. See, there's no entities, no buildings that were tagged as entities in Auckland. So it's the same entity list. So all of these are also buildings, but I'm showing just any building in this case. So what I want to do is mark partially, so some of these entities as entities within Auckland so I can show you what happens. So one of the ways is you can use our selection tool. So if I select, let's say, just some of these entities on the side here, I can click the tags here and go apply tag Auckland. And checked only means, so the table you saw before, I can choose to check some of them and then only apply it to them. But we're not interested in that. We're going to do all entities in this that we just selected. So apply tag, let's go Auckland again and press apply. So I successfully applied tag to entities. So I'm still showing all the entities for this menu item. So all of the same entities are visible. But hopefully if I change to this menu item now, there we go. So the entities that I tagged as Auckland are the only entities that are currently visible now. So entities can have multiple tags too, so you can get a little more complicated and have fancier menu items of checking more specific tags. Any questions about that?
I'm good.
Okay, awesome.
I'm going to watch the movie again.
You're going to watch the movie again? I think the next thing that Peter and I talked about for the agenda was the sources, Peter, right? Or is there anything else we want to cover before that?
I think other than the relational database type, remember the from table A to table B kind of thing.
I just want to explain what we might achieve with that.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of conceptually describe to us, because you and I've described what we need. Maybe you can describe what it's going to be deployed.
So we have no, as a warning before I start talking, we have no concrete schedule for when we would like to do these things. They're just stuff we've discussed in meetings, especially for Alex. Al put interest into the sources that you told me about before we started this meeting. So we have a way to make new entity types that are sourced from another entity type or a different source entirely. So let me just find the sources button. There we go. So I think Buildings has an example one there. This one's from CSV. So this entity type takes this CSV file as one of its sources to get its list of entities. And one of its sources can also be a different entity type. And so Peter's question to me was that, can we have multiple entity types or multiple sources that go through a calculation to reach a new list of entities? So it's a dynamic list of entities that are, they're not just values that you type in, but instead multiple different sources that go through any sort of calculation, for example, adding width plus height and this final entity to have that total as one of its attributes. So right now we have a way to do it from one entity type to another entity type. We don't have a way to do multiple at once. So we can do, for example, address, and I can edit the mapping. So it's from address entity type, I can get a new list of entities that will go to this entity type. But there's no way to go between multiple and combine it. But I can already do some calculations where I press plus here and I can say, for example, concatenate. This will let me drag two attributes from entity type A and make it result in some sort of attribute, one attribute. So for example, if I went in street number, if I went street number and I went to country for whatever reason, I can make my example header to be equal to the concatenation of those two.
Okay.
So Alex L did discuss his enthusiasm for combining multiple sources to make one, but it's not on our horizon at the moment.
But Mark, do you not understand what I'm trying to get to because of the Renaissance need for creating derivative data from their so-called templates of information, and because they're using like a good example, like today we went through the mathematical calculation, how the parcel size with the current cost of creating cost per square foot to build out an area, and we need to be able to figure out dynamically each parcel will have its own parcel size plus the cost per square foot to generate the final number so that he can actually project how much would it take to develop that particular parcel, be that as a residential, a mixed use, or maybe a business thing for each parcel. And you want to be able to extrapolate that data based on some static information parcel as well as the cost per square foot in that area to do construction. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure I understand. I may have missed a bit. I just got another damn collapse of something in the house. I just rushed out to.
Oh, okay. So what I was describing to
so,
be essentially the down the road development that will be require some sort of kind of derivative calculation from different entities table. So Don has a table that consists of all the parcel information, size-wise, square footage, land use, and goes on and on. These are set numbers that is created by the city. Yeah. Then there's another table of construction costs. For example, how much it will cost to do a certain kind of job in that particular area, because it varies by region, because there's a human cost, material cost, and goes on and on. So that's another table. So what he's trying to do is use the relationship of those two tables from table A to table B, take like a couple of attribute tables and said, if I take table A1 and from table B, B1, if I do a mathematical calculation between like maybe multiply or maybe subtraction or goes on, and I need a final value from those two tables in a third table or third entity table, or maybe can populate in some other table, is that existing now? Because from what Matt describing, you guys don't have that mathematic derivative information as of yet.
So dynamic attributes.
Yes.
Yeah, Matthew, as I understand it, we can have formulas in the attributes.
Yes, so we can have formulas when importing information, and we can have formulas when going from one entity type to another. This is what I'm showing here. So you can have a new entity type that uses a different entity type as a source, and the way it gets a value is dynamically. So it goes through some sort of function here. For example, the concatenation that I just showed, where you can have an attribute that's the concatenation of two attributes of a different entity type. Yes. But we don't have let's say I want a entity type building, and if one of my attributes is a dynamic attribute, which is the calculation of maybe my own attributes, or two different entity types, which is something that Alex wanted to do. He brought up in a meeting quite a while ago now. So we don't support exactly what Peter wants, but we have at least the beginnings of it.
Right. So that may be something we have to flesh out, Peter, for Renaissance as part of development.
Yes, exactly. I just want to tee you guys up that is probably one of the requirement that he's going to ask for you guys. I know the concat is one of the tools. So basically, I'm seeing here the source data mapping. There will be almost like a typical database where you have multiple functionality, be that multiply, group by, divide by, and goes on and on. If it's a full-blown database tool function, then yes, that is the thing I'm asking for. So if you look at a typical Esri, the so-called database, they actually have all these functionality built in. So all you do is column A drag into it, column B drag into it. So what you do, column A multiply column B equals some other data, minus that, subtract, and take column D or something, and just multiply that again and goes on. And final result just gets spits out. And whether it goes to a new table or goes back to the same column and do a replace, that has to be part of the so-called, as you call the so-called functionality that's available to us. Because I like the schema that you're giving us right now. I just want to be able to have more than just concatenation. I want to be any kind
can
of
shed some light on from a different angle on that. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure,
but
no problem. Yeah.
Alex L is also working on Data Lab, but it's a very large project and it might take quite a while to reach the light of day. But his idea in that is you can make a filter to find entities and then use a different filter to change the values of the entities or replace or delete what you're saying. So you can So you can work on the existing data dynamically, or at least what he's doing is that you run a query and you apply the data. So it doesn't happen kind of live as the data changes, but whenever you want to update values, you can make a complicated query, a complicated second query to apply to that first query, and then an action of some sort.
Yeah, so that's it.
And since we're on topic of this, it's also nice to mention that the same should be developed for these relationships right now. They are all the stylings and values of the relationship schema is you have to type it in manually for that relationship. It does not use the values of entity A and entity B. You have to use values of the relationship itself. So it's also the same topic of it should be calculated dynamically from both of the entities, just like you would like them for just normal entities that aren't the relationship parabolas.
Okay, good to know that it's being developed, but I guess with Renaissance wanting to have that, you probably have to expedite it a little bit because they're pretty close to kind of talking about this in January, just to let you know, Mark. So the next discussion might pop up, so I want to give you a heads up.
Right. So I think what we need to see, Peter, if we could, is some example calculations.
I can send you a spreadsheet, and it has all the formulas as well as how the formulas are being extracted from different columns. And you can actually, if you have any question, it's actually in a column, but at the same time, if you have any question that doesn't make any sense, we can have a discussion with Don if you need it, and Mark and Kevin, myself, because he's been drilling us in how we kind of want to describe how the table works and how we create all the information.
Yeah.
So I think
it may be what we do is that, we actually use a spreadsheet in the, like programmatically on the outside to dump data, do a bunch of calculations outside.
Exactly. Yeah.
As a plug in Matv, and then import the result back.
If you think that it's outside is more feasible compared to even dynamically, sure. I mean, I'm all for it. I just want to find the path.
It's more for we're just speculating. I think Alex L is going to have the best idea on what to do on this one.
Sure.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So if we can get a good description of exactly what needs to be done, Peter, written down, then that we can go from there. But there'll be a way to do it.
Yeah, I know. Let's do it after the new year, the first week of January, because then I'll have it nailed down. Because this week is all data discussion, so I'll have all bunch of notes that we can talk about next week.
Probably, Peter. It's going to be second week of January before we get.
I was going to say.
Oh,
so
you guys
a lot of
vacation. I totally forgot about it.
yeah. We do summer vacation, New Year, and everything all at the same time.
Yeah, I remember last year. Yeah, I vaguely remember.
so I would say second week of January is.
Got it.
Really
okay, no worries. Yeah, we probably need some time out here anyway, so everybody should just kind of take a little breather here.
Yeah.
So I'll schedule
timing.
it.
We're doing the production release right now, Peter. So it's a good timing to get it out, so all the developers can have a clear head and then go have a break and then come back and start working again.
Perfect.
So just so you're aware, Peter, what that means is that all the production URLs will move to where UAT is at the moment, essentially.
I'm getting that feed. You guys are just going balls to the wall. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's I pretty much got what I need today. I mean, John, do you have any question that you want to throw at it? But if you want this recording, I can send it your way. You can kind of take your own time and go through it.
I'll have a ton of questions, but not until I start actually doing.
Yeah.
And then figure out how much that I really don't know.
Okay.
So I recommend contacting Peter with your questions through email, and then Peter might even probably be able to answer any of them or most of them. And then Peter, you can ask me if you can't fill any of the gaps. You can
No.
email
I
me.
think chances are, if I really get stuck, trust me, you'll be the first one I'll write to.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mavi. I'm good right now. I mean, this is definitely very helpful.
Yeah, thank you.